And in the past, I've tried to do a good mix of like some UI trends and like some navigation trends and some tool trends and things like that. And I got to be honest, in the last few years, haven't spent a lot of time doing hands-on design. It's just not been what I've been doing lately. I've been more on the consulting side. And so I decided this year to focus more on some macro trends or just things that are affecting our industry. So I'm not going to dig into tools and stuff this year. But like I said, at the ends, I'm going to open it up to the audience. So if you want to talk about something that you've seen, absolutely up to you. I think my presentation is going to be pretty short. So I would also love to hear the things that you're thinking about as well. And as I was putting together this short list, one of the things that I liked about it was, we've been through a rough few years. I know we keep saying that over and over again, but it's true. And, coming out on the other side of it, there's still I feel like we're still dealing with so many problems in the world, and they seem to be getting bigger and scarier. But as I was putting this list together, I actually saw a lot of hope, and I saw a new role for designers that I think has been growing for a while, to not just design websites and apps and good experiences and make things easy and useful for people, but actually to take a bigger role in tackling some big problems. So I also, it sort of happened by accident that this list turned out that way, but I think it was a happy accident, and I'm interested to hear about what you think about it too. So without further ado, the first major trend that I've noticed about is I keep hearing about behavioral psychology. And I love this one. There's been a few talks in the last year at these events about designers playing around with cognitive biases and behavioral patterns. And, I feel like in the past, when we've talked about behavioral psychology and design, it's been very limited to creating addictive products or stickiness or keeping people coming back. But now I hear about it in a lot more positive ways. I hear about people trying to, or designers trying to solve problems for people. And especially since the pandemic, there's been a proliferation of new types of apps and platforms online to help people with mental illness, to help them build better habits in their lives, to help them be more sustainable in their lives, to help them learn a new language, or to increase their brain power and their memory and their cognitive development. And they're everywhere. And the other thing that I noticed is not only are we seeing these types of apps, but they're being very upfront about it. I feel like behavioral psychology used to be kind of secretive, We know that like Facebook and Instagram, they're using these dopamine tricks to keep us addicted to their products. That was always very, very secret. And now I feel like it's right out in the open. I've seen a lot of these sort of like self-help apps who are quite upfront about it. They say, we work with behavioral psychologists, and we are here to rewire your brain and help you do things. And it's quite out in the open and transparent. And I think that's a really good thing, because I don't think our tools should be that secretive. In fact, if we're using behavioral psychology in secret, it feels a lot more negative or dubious than if we just come out and say it. Because I think that people are really actively looking for tools in their lives to help them be better, to live better lives, to improve. And they're looking for really interesting new types of tools to do this. And as designers, we're in the perfect position to get into this type of research and to learn about cognitive biases, to learn about interior motivations, and to learn about design patterns that trigger those types of things to help people and to be transparent and open about it. So I've seen these are just like a few examples that I've seen. This is an app that basically helps with your mental well-being. And I think that they even are specifically targeting people who are feeling depressed. And they have all these different ways to kind of coax commitments to get people to sort of stick with these new habits. And so they've tried different types of contracts, and some of them are really simple. You sort of like write a letter to yourself and send it, and then it'll send it to you 6 months from now, so you can see if you've progressed, or if not, maybe give yourself a push. There's one that basically just asks you to give your thumbprint, and just by the act of like giving a thumbprint and signing a digital contract, it triggers something in your mind so that you stick with it. There's really cool patterns out there that are interesting to use. Duolingo is in the middle. Of course, we've seen streaks on other apps like Snapchat, which I think are used in a more negative way to kind of keep people addicted to the app. But streaks can also be used for good. It helps you build a habit over time. I use a habit tracker. It's not necessarily a streak one. It's a really simple one where all I do is I have like 6 things that I want to try to do every day, and I don't do them every day. But every time I tick off, I did it today, even if it was just exercising for 15 minutes, I feel really good about it, and I get to see that every day and make progress. So it can be a useful pattern for good. And then the third one is one that also it's just that's actually the one that I'm using, the one on the far side there. They have all these sort of like AI-based methods to help rewire your brain and build better habits for the future. But the reason I like this one is they basically say everything that we're doing is science-backed. And if you click through to one of these plans, there's a list of links of sources to all of the behavioral scientists or cognitive science behind it, so that you can read about all of these things that you're doing. And I think that's a really good thing. Feels like a design for good. Because I feel like linked to that, the Facebook papers came out in 2021, and not much has happened. I feel like it was a pretty explosive expose into what social media and just being online is doing to our brains, and particularly the brains of young people, and it's not good. And while we haul out Mark Zuckerberg in front of the United States Congress every few months and grill him on things, there really hasn't been much effort by social media companies to counteract these negative emotions or these negative side effects. And it's becoming a really big problem. And it's not just about spending too much online. It's about exposing young people to misinformation that changes the way that they're thinking about things and the way that they interact with other people. It's causing them to pull apart and become disassociated from one another or from positive role models in their lives. The algorithms that were exposed in the Facebook papers basically said outright that the most successful content on their platforms are the ones the content that make people angry, that elicit a really negative response. And so these algorithms are biased towards content that's bad for us. And if you look at Instagram, which was directly linked to depression and suicide in teens, the algorithms there, they're so focused on extreme body images that the algorithms on Instagram not only favor, bodies in bikinis, but they favor bodies without heads. If you post a picture of yourself on Instagram with your face, it'll get less views than without your face. And it's causing anxiety and depression, and it's a really big problem. And, I'll get into what we can do about it in a minute, but I looked at some statistics about Flanders, which I thought were really interesting to share with you. Kids are spending more and more time on their smartphones. It's trending younger and younger. My daughter is 8 years old, and she has kids in her class that have a smartphone that's fully connected to the internet and social media. Not all of them, but a few of them. And they're experiencing a lot of online abuse and aggression. And they're seeing mostly things like hate messages against particular groups, images of violence and drug use. And apparently in Flanders, we have the highest rate of sexting. So these dirty little bastards are sending these lots of private messages to each other. I thought that was a really interesting statistic. Not to say that that's a bad thing for teenagers to be sexting. I'd probably do it when I was 16 if I had a cell phone as well. But there's a lot going on that parents aren't really aware of. And to be honest, there's not a lot of solutions in the market right now to counteract that. In fact, across the EU, between 70 and 80% of teenagers are using devices that are completely unprotected, and they're not being monitored by their parents. So I think that's something to think about. There are some parental controls coming along. Obviously, if you have kids of this age, it's important to look into it. There are some sort of parental controls built into operating systems. They're mainly dealing with time that they spend online and restricting when they can get online. They're really easy to get around, I'll say that. Kids are really good at doing that. But there's some promising work being done in the field of AI that's basically combing messages and images, and they're working at trying to sort of spot toxic messages ahead of time and alert parents before it happens. There's probably going to be a lot of like privacy issues to deal with, but it's coming along. Now, I know that as designers, I try to keep these things really practical. There's probably not a ton of opportunity that most of us have in our everyday jobs to, save the youth from horrible messages. But I think it's, since we work in the digital field, I think it's just important for us to understand this and to just address it in our real lives. Because with the parental controls that we have right now, they're doing something, but they're not doing enough. And what we're finding right now with these types of tools is that most of it is not able to be controlled by software yet. It's really still a very personal problem, and it needs personal connections to be able to fix. So talking to your kids or your nephews and nieces or just young people that you know about these things, being an ally to them, letting them know that you are there to talk to them, that you understand these types of things, that you understand the internet, and you can help them is really important. Or on the other side, your parents or your grandparents are also particularly vulnerable to scams and misinformation. It's important to understand that, since we understand the internet and we're in this unique position, even if we can't bring it into our jobs, we can bring it into our lives. So that's another trend that I thought I would highlight and that I think will be really important in the coming years. And since I mentioned AI, I have to say it, AI for everyone. I know, basically if you have a startup, you can't get VC funding unless you've got AI in your deck somewhere, and that's probably been the case for the last few years. But I think we all know with the release of ChatGPT, it is officially top of minds, and it's officially out for the masses. It's for the people. And I've got some statistics here. It took ChatGPT 5 days to reach 1 million users. Some of you are nodding. You've seen these statistics, like it's on the meme scrolls. iPhone took 74 days. Oh, ChatGPT. Oh, sorry. Do you not? I should back up and say what it is, and I'm probably going to do a really crap job at explaining it. But it's a new AI that can basically, you can give it a topic and it can write a blog post for you. It can basically act so much like a human being that most humans can't tell the difference between the computer and a real human being. And in fact, some schools and universities have already taken out home-written homework or written like papers that you write at home from their curriculum because they can't tell the difference between a student writing a paper and ChatGPT writing a paper. It's very, very advanced. So on one hand, a little scary. On the other hand, also could be incredibly useful. But I think the reason it's on the trend list this year and it wasn't last year is because of the massive growth. So I said, it took 5 days to reach 1 million users. It took iPhone 74 days to reach 1 million users. Okay, it's pretty good. Instagram took 2.5 months, and Netflix took 5 years. Sorry, Netflix took 5 years to reach 1 million users. So that happens like a lightning bolt. But I think it's really interesting. I'll be honest, I haven't dabbled in this too much. I've used it to write a LinkedIn marketing post one time, and I thought it was okay, but I didn't actually post it because I thought it felt really phony. But has anyone else used it like in real life? Yeah? How did you use it?
I used it for defining UX patterns.
Oh yeah? And
not really defining, but just checking the basic ones.
and how did it do that? So like it tested it for you, or?
No, it's just well, it could be also done easily by Google search in a way.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have to check a lot of different pages and stuff. And here it's just typing something like for like B2B software. What would be like from difference between using add, invite, or create. So this is very basic. Or for example,
Okay.
how to better put the text into confirmation messages.
Okay.
So it's nothing like
yeah. Just like filler copy.
It saves the time. You can do it yourself, but
Mm-hmm.
especially today we're just quickly discussing with the developers,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can just quickly validate it.
That's a good point. It has a very neutral and very clear voice. So for writing requirements, actually, that is a really good work hack.
But when you go to like more complex ones, especially
Mm-hmm.
B2B, there's plenty of them. Then of course it starts to give you very generic replies.
Yeah.
But then also the second thing is like yeah, it puts it really well, because what we struggled with earlier is that you have to write them, and designers often not, especially if it's not your mother language, you can have a like trouble to properly
Yeah,
explain
yeah.
things. So it kind of also helps with saves time for writing.
So that's the thing. I mean, sometimes technology can be scary, but I think in a lot of ways, especially something like this, there's going to be a lot of great ways that it can make us a lot more efficient. Does anyone else have like a work efficiency story that they've used? Yeah.
As he's saying, like, I think because I work at Nokia,
Mm-hmm.
we are developing like the 6G campaign for like the next technology, right? And my friend, I don't have the chat GPT, but my friend has, so he was like, yeah, just tell me something, and I was like, okay, like develop like a marketing campaign for a 6G launch or something.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the things that the tool was telling me was things that I already know. But I mean, if you don't know like a very deep knowledge, I think in marketing it can save you lots of time, like
Yeah.
just for the steps, like what should you do, right? And I mean, imagine if you need to put together like just websites, you know, like the word just wireframe or something like
Yeah.
this to show. If you have like mid journey for the art direction
Mm-hmm.
part of it, and you have like ChatGPT, you can build like a really cool mock-up in very less hours
Yeah.
that you would do if you do yourself, right?
So like marketing content, blog posts, and then like just dummy copy for
Exactly.
mock-ups and things like that. Yeah, for sure. Great uses.
And I think it could give you maybe also like a clue of the CEO, because if it's something that's AI, it's trained, and the words that it's saying is like probably something that you want to repeat, right? So for SEO.
For SEO. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they can generate additional keywords and things that will respond to that. Yeah, I think that'll revolutionize the SEO industry, honestly. Oh my gosh. Yeah. If you can still get paid hourly for that and use ChatGPT, then you're gonna be in the money spot. All right, well, let's talk about that a little bit more later. Going back to sort of things that I think are going to happen for good. Digital well-being as a default, I think, is a really interesting one. What we're finding, obviously, and again, this is also linked with the Facebook papers, is just that people lose hours and hours a day scrolling endless content, and it's not just meme feeds and social media feeds and things. It's also just with so many more processes being digitized. And sometimes very poorly, we're just spending a ton of time online dealing with stuff, dealing with admin. And, like we're doing our part for the companies that we work for to make things as streamlined and familiar as possible. But the fact is like a lot of things are really still very buggy. And I think that it's worth it to recognize and understand that we contribute to the problem as well. Like the types of work that we do for corporations, getting people through just typical online flows is also part of the digital load that we take on. It's part of the scrolling, and it's part of that that adds up to sort of just our digital unwell-being. And a simple way, obviously, that we contribute to this is we try to make things as easy as possible. And we try to preserve the mental energy of our users to make things simple. But I think that it's important for us to understand that we're part of that, and to use that as an excuse to talk to our clients to say, like, don't try to trick people into staying on your site longer than they need to. Don't try to trick people into having to search through endless stuff just because you want your site to be stickier or something like that. We all have to take our part in ensuring that people actually spend less time online. And I think if we can build in these types of measures into our KPIs or in things that we expose to our employers to show like, the average person spends this much time per day online anyway, and we're contributing this much of it, like that's a KPI that we should be working towards as well. In general, getting people offline so that they can enjoy their lives as well. And also thinking about it in terms of just general tasks. If you're working on a recipe site, don't just think about feeding them recipes. Think about how it can help them with their shopping, because putting together a meal plan and shopping and going to the grocery store is also a pain, and it's part of, just the mental load that we take on every week. Or build in ways that you can share these lists and do planning with your partner so that it's not just one person with the app in the household that's responsible for all of the meal planning and the cooking and the buying and all of that type of thing. So these are all little ways that we can sort of help the mental well-being of people in general as we design products. Accessibility is obviously nothing new. There's been tons of talks at these events and many, many other events as well. But this is the year it becomes a law. So if you're working for an agency or a company and you don't have an accessibility plan in place, you're in trouble. And this should be something that you're bringing up and asking for actively. And it's not just because we should be making it accessible for people with disabilities. It helps all of our users. When you design for accessibility, you just design things to be easier for everyone, for distracted people, for people who have toddlers tugging on their arm, for people who are who lost their glasses, people who temporarily broke their arm. We all have these little incapacitations, and if you design really accessible applications and software and websites, then you're designing better experiences for everyone. It's a no-brainer. It's here to stay, and it will be law. So, if it's not there yet, make sure it happens this year. And likewise, digital sustainability, I think, is another one that this is the year. I think that, honestly, in a weird way, the digital world has been lagging a little bit behind some of the other industries because we've always been told that we're, by default, a sustainable industry because we eliminated paper. We're no longer printing in offices, and that's great. But I think most of us underestimate the carbon footprint of these digital applications and the activities that people are doing on them. Granted, we've shifted off paper, but we've shifted a lot of our energy and carbon footprint onto digital applications, and it adds up. And I think a lot of people are shocked to understand that the digital carbon footprint globally is the same as the aviation industry. So you hear a lot about slow vacations. There's whole airlines that are canceling short-haul flights. And the aviation industry is under immense pressure to lower their carbon footprint, but we have the same carbon footprints. And granted, a lot of that is, sure, in cryptocurrency and like heavy streaming services like gaming, but 40% of it is just everyday emailing and checking stuff on your phone, everyday stuff. And we are to blame because the carbon footprint of a website keeps going up. It's 4 times heavier than it was just a little over 10 years ago. So we're building heavier and more energy heavy sites. And we don't have to be. There's actually a lot of really easy ways that we can do as designers and front-end developers, back-end developers as well, that can lighten that load. If you don't know where to get started, you can talk to us. I talk a lot about sustainability, digital sustainability, and so does Bavo. So if you want to learn how to get started, you can. I'm not like plugging us or anything. I'm not selling anything, but use Comic Sans is great advice. But you can talk to us if you don't know where to get started. But really, this is the year to push your agency to have something in place, not only as like maybe an offering to clients, which is a great way to get started. Hey, if you learn how to do this, you can sell it as a product. We can lighten the footprint of your website, but also it should just become daily practice. And there's a lot of other side benefits that come along with it. If you have a lighter loading website, it runs faster. Google will start promoting carbon efficient or energy efficient websites, so you'll have better SEO. It makes people happier in the long run. And when you're spending less on energy, you're also spending less money on energy. So there's all these side effects that are great, and there's just no reason not to get into this. It's really simple things to do, like file sizes, font choices, colors, all kinds of stuff. It's easy. And then the last one, I guess, is a little bit of an anomaly, but it's interesting because I've been following a lot of cool trends in IoT for a while. It's still a tiny, tiny part of the market. But Bavo's really, we live together. Bavo's really into it, and he's like filled our house with all kinds of IoT devices, whether or not I'm into it. And so they're just around me now. Lights, smoke detectors, locks, doorbells, speakers, all kinds of things. So whether I like it or not, they're in my household, and they are coming to your household, and they're coming to the households of the people that we design for. And what I think is really interesting is that at least in the home, and maybe eventually in the workplace, they're really taking over screens as the digital hub. And the reason I think that they're going to take over screens is, number one, it's healthier. People want to get off their screens. Like I mentioned, they're scrolling too much anyway. And the cool thing about this is you can link together all kinds of IoT settings and thingies to create whole experiences, which I find really amazing. So, you know, if you wake up in the morning, you can say, "Hey Google, good morning."
Yeah, there are some around here.
They always start talking when I do that at home. And they, in my home at least, they can slightly turn on a light next to my closet, not enough to wake him up, but just a little bit so that I can get dressed. It can start the coffee downstairs. It can turn on the heating, and it can start reading. It can turn on the music in the bathroom, and it can start reading like the weather and my horoscope in the daily headlines or whatever of the day. I don't read my horoscope. But anyway, you can basically use one command to initiate a whole experience. And that's just a good morning exercise. I feel like if we really thought about, as experience designers, how can you trigger an entire experience with one word, that's really interesting. What's another one that we have? We have, "Hey Google, TV time." It lowers the lights and it turns off a light strip that we have next to our TV. It turns on the TV, and I guess that's all for now. That's all for now. Oh, and then it turns on the speaker. But like, that's an entertainment experience. If you had more gizmos, if we had more gizmos in our living room, then we could even create a much more immersive experience. But I think that's fascinating, that with one command, you can change a whole environment. So that's why I think that this is going to be a huge trend, and will take over all of these screens and touch screens and stuff that they talk about, and really change your life at home, and then maybe eventually work as well. So that's what I've been seeing. What have you guys, is there anything else that I missed that you wanted to bring up? Or do you have any questions about stuff that I talked about? Either one. Yeah.
About digital sustainability, do you see it, do you use it to sell yourself as or do you use it to as some kind of competitive advantage to sell it to customers or clients, or do you see that happening or not? Because like you stated, it seems like the sector is not really caring about it right now. Or how do you see that?
I can talk for hours about this, but the answer is yes, absolutely, because we should all be working towards these Paris agreements, right? All companies need to have a sustainability process in place. They need to be addressing their own carbon footprints in terms of how they do their own business. They need to be looking at their supply partners and establishing better working relationships with them, which means sharing data, working together to make things more efficient. And they also need to be working with their customers and their employees, for that matter, to promote better sustainable behaviors, and teaching people how to use their products and services in a more sustainable way, or just launching new products and services that are more sustainable. So you can absolutely sell consulting services like that. Or on what I was talking about more in terms of energy use, you can absolutely put together a proposition to help lighten the carbon footprint of websites, applications, blah, 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 blah. And there's a lot of carbon calculators online that you can use. Some are better than the others, but just Google a few, where you can pretty quickly do a little audit of your client's website. We tend to do it at my agency, we do it, and then we benchmark it with some of their competitors, like, you're 50% more dirty than your competitors, so you should lighten it, and then we sell that as a service.
They want to pay for that for you to make it greener.
Yeah, they should pay for it. It's basically just a design refresh. It's a mix of front-end dev and front-end design. And depending on how dirty they are and how far they want to go, you can charge them to redesign their website and make it more energy efficient, for sure. But then bake it into your sustaining services, not just, yeah.
Those audit websites, do we give feedback like this font
No,
Okay, I want to.
I don't think they're that sophisticated yet. No.
It's quite simple. There are only 4 fonts that guarantee come preloaded on every computer in the world.
Well,
Helvetica, Arial, I forgot the third one, and the last one being Comic Sans. You
Times
can,
New Roman, probably.
yeah, Times New Roman. So you can save load time and therefore bytes being sent over data centers, because when the HTML gets written out by your browser, it will just say, I know this font, I have this font, I don't have to load this.
so
It is the more sustainable fonts.
fonts and colors and dark mode are definitely some drops in the buckets. I mean, everything is a drop in the bucket, but a lot of it is like,
The screen that has to use a lot less lighting.
yeah. But a lot of it is also like caching, auto-loading, the size of the files that you have on there. A lot of people just have like super heavy video files or like downloads because they just don't think about optimizing them before they throw them up there.
They're
Just
also a little bit
images.
afraid because of the new screens, of the high quality that they don't. It's not that nice and high
Yeah.
quality like the new iPads and stuff like that.
I know, but do you really need a video playing in the background of your website? Because there's a lot of accessibility issues with it. And in fact, I can add, and this might be a scoop, hot take, whatever. The WCAG is about to release the 2.2 accessibility guidelines. We're expecting Europe to almost immediately adopt those and just update the law from the 1 point, whatever we are on, to the 2.2. I can tell you from the sources writing them that the same organization is currently writing sustainability guidelines, and Europe is already invested. So this too will become law, and it will be optimized like, don't use JPEG. At the very least PNG, preferably WebP. WebP is the most sustainable format out there, and it's these types of guidelines. Actually, if you Google my name, and this is a plug, man. I have an entire slide deck on SlideShare with what you can do, very hands-on as a UX designer, what kind of actions you can take today to make your websites just better. It's a few years old, but everything in there is still valid. No carousels, good fonts, there's a lot.
But let's talk to Babo during the
Yeah.
during the break. Anyone? I think you had a question. Was it covered?
If you could elaborate on how accessibility is going to become more law, a legal requirement.
It's in my speaker's notes actually, and they're too small.
Because
to
I
read.
know it's currently a legal requirement mostly for government services.
Yeah.
And as a freelance designer, for most of my clients, if I don't talk about accessibility, nobody does.
Yeah.
And there's only so much I can do from the design point of view. And having it be a legal requirement would be a foot in the door to get them to think about it.
So it's called the European Accessibility Act. It was signed into law by all EU member states this year, and by 2025, it says applicable enterprises have to fully observe it. But I don't think it's just government anymore.
No, it's all public.
it's-
If you trade public, it's mandatory.
Okay, so public companies.
So that's going to roll out pretty quick.
Yeah, okay.
So 2025, that's not that far away. And with the rate some of these companies change, they need to get started now.
Yeah. Also, if you launch a new design, let's say this year, best case scenario, it's still around in 2025. So
Yeah, right? Yeah.
be
So they
prepared.
should start thinking about it now. Good luck. Anyone else?
You mentioned AI for content generation, for copywriting, for the
Yeah.
text, but there's also the image generation. It's insane.
Yeah,
Let's say for some reason you need you want to convey your message better by having an image of a horse and a milkman in the style of Van Gogh. You can just have that copyright free.
That's true. I've been using the thispersonisnotreal.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, for a long time for personas.
Yeah, this person doesn't exist.
This person doesn't exist.com for personas and stuff like that. But you're right, they're getting much more sophisticated. You can just tell them to put things together like hot dog and a mailman. And
Yeah.
I think now they do start having legal issues.
Yeah.
There is now, especially those paid photo stocks and artists, because it's AI is learning from them.
From them, yeah.
And then
well, I've got an assignment for AI.
The
because-
original author, owner, should have a way to prove that, of course, to judge that it's stealing from him. So, but indeed, he does steal, of course, from humans.
What I want, because I work in sustainability and technology a lot, is better stock images for sustainability. Because every time I have to Google image, this is the crap that comes up, and I'm so sick of it. The sprout in the hands, and the globe. I've seen that on so many presentations. So let's train some AI to make better sustainability stock images.
Or you can
please.
use ChatGPT to generate words that's like close to sustainability, so you can put them on the AI or like Getty Images or something. You don't get something too obvious, but close enough to the
Absolutely. I'm going to start training an AI tomorrow on this problem because it drives me nuts.
But to really like images is something crazy. Like I spend so much time on my job just trying to find like a meaningful image sometimes, and
I know.
you know it's horrible.
It is horrible.
It's really horrible.
We're running close on time, but Nora, I saw your hand up, so you want to be the last?
Yeah, just quickly. So when it comes to voice control as the household hub, I mean, I think this is a very interesting trend, especially also when it comes to accessibility. I think it's great as well. But I wanted to ask you whether you're aware of any statistics, if this is a trend that we're going to see mainly within like a certain generation, like younger people between 20, 30, or is it also something that's already kind of becoming more popular among, I don't know, people between 30, 40, 40, 50? It could also be, of course, very interesting for elderly people there. Maybe they find it easier to control then.
It'll depend on the use case for sure, and I didn't do any hardcore research into statistics on that. I do think that, like, from the last time I checked, the market penetration in Belgium is below 10% in general, in terms of IoT in general. But I think if you look at really specific use cases, like for the elderly, I mean, in a way, they've been using technology like this for a lot longer than the younger people have, because they've got these sort of like home assist things that are connected to the internet, like that's IoT. So if they fall, they're immediately connected with, by something around their, that they can wear or that's in their home. So absolutely, there's use cases across the board. I mean, there's always early adopters and sort of like the first people, and that will most likely trend to be the younger generation for sure. But I think it's across the board. What I have noticed is the boomers are the most afraid that it's listening to them. I've done some focus groups on this recently, and the young people don't care about it, but the boomers were all like, I think it's listening to me. I don't trust it. So maybe they'll be a little slower on the adoption, but they tend to be slower anyway. Okay, well, thank you. Let's talk some more over a beer after. Thanks for joining us tonight. And our next events is obviously the next February 28th at the House of Innovation, which houses a whole bunch of startups and design agencies, but will be hosted by Monkey Shot and Catcoon. They're kind of like partner companies. So we've been there before. It's a great space. It's up in Parkspoor Noord, that area. So hopefully we'll see you there next month. Thanks.